All right, so good morning, Bask, and welcome to Bangalore. Like we said, this is our first session of the morning, so the only thing that can help right now is our session and the coffee.
That's right.
To get people started. So let's do that. Like we said, Bask, Iyer, CIO of VMware and Dell, and we could always read from like a long introduction, but Bask, what would be really interesting for our people is, why don't you give a little bit of your story and background as to, and I think there is some Bangalore in your background, so that will be great to hear.
Yeah, so this is not a good start. About 30 years ago, I actually ran a business in Bangalore. I used to sell refrigerators and air conditioners in a place called Shrungar Shopping Center in MG Road. And then I started selling computers, and I quickly found out that I didn't know anything about computers, and I actually lost some. I made a ton of money on refrigerators and air conditioners, but I was going to college at the same time. So the tenant kind of told me, hey, he looked at me as a son, and he said, you're a smart guy, don't pay rent here. Just pay me a little bit more money and you can buy this building. And I remember telling him, who the hell will buy real estate in Bangalore? It makes no sense. So that explains to you how wrong you could be. Yeah, but I went to US, I worked in Cape Canaveral on the space programs, mainly on solar. And then I was in manufacturing for about 10 years, J&J, GlaxoSmithKline. I was in e-commerce in GlaxoSmithKline. And then I was the chief digital officer for Honeywell in 2000. And then ended up being the group CIO for Honeywell, I was in general management and so on. The Bangalore connection is for the last 30 years, so ever since I started business here, I've been coming here almost every quarter. I was partly responsible for building out the Honeywell India Center, partly responsible for GlaxoSmithKline India. I was one of the guys who signed up Sachin Tendulkar for advertising for Horlick, for Boost. And then, I've stayed since. I've been executive sponsor for Juniper Networks. I worked from Honeywell to Juniper Networks to now I'm the CIO for VMware and the CIO for Dell and EMC as well.
Perfect. When we talk about VMware, sometimes we associate it with storage, sometimes we associate with virtualization very strongly. How would you describe VMware in your own words?
Okay. I think we actually enjoy and suffer the brand of virtualization, right? So it's like if you ask and see what does Godrej do, and people say, well, my dad used to have the Godrej Bureau. That's how they talk. So anytime I talk about VMware to people, they say, we love you guys. We buy your product. We use it for a long time. You do virtualization. But we do a lot more. The company did that. I was a customer of VMware from 2000 or 2003. They were revolutionized. They were kind of foundational to cloud. They were the first to say, you don't have to buy dedicated hardware. You can virtualize that, and now you can share across. That's kind of the genesis of cloud, right? And so you don't need to have individual server. You don't have to worry about who runs it. You feel like you're virtually getting the server. From that, they have taken that computer and then say, let me virtualize storage too. So you don't need your own storage. You can get a bunch of mass storage. You can feel like you get the same storage, which is very similar to what you get on the virtual storages online you get. Now, last year and a half, we've been virtualizing the network. So network is very complicated. So when you move from one place to the other, the folks worry about all the firewall rules. So now they're virtualizing that on software as well. And it's a classic example of a company, people say software, is always going to win over hardware. This is a classic example of a company that kind of commoditizes the hardware layer, moves it up a stack, and does it in software. And so what we have done is now we do the entire, we call it software-defined data center, not just a computer. And then we are now hooking up your internal cloud. So you can have a private cloud, which you run yourself. You can have Amazon or IBM, and we hook it to them. So think of VMware as somebody who gives options. You can buy Dell, HP, IBM. You can buy EMC, NetApp, whatever storage you want. You can use Amazon, IBM, whatever cloud you want, or you can even choose to run on your own cloud. So typically gives a lot of options to folks on where to run their infrastructure on.
And that brings us to an interesting point, right? For CIOs, generally, infrastructure has been such a huge, investment, sort of capex and opex. It has also been a huge mind share from a CIO conversation. As virtualization happens, as all these cloud providers come in, Where do you see the infrastructure portion of CIO job going forward?
Yeah, I think Einstein or Vinci said that things should be simple but not simpler. Yes, the infrastructure has been simplified, but you cannot not worry about things. And so I think one of the mistakes that cloud does is people who don't have to worry about it, put it somewhere and don't care. This is how we got into trouble with outsourcing. They said, you know, why do we even have to do, why do we have to do IT, outsource IT? Why do you have to do HR, outsource HR? I mean, you can take that to a ridiculous extreme. You know, why do we have to have a CEO, outsource CEO, don't have to make products outsource? Because you can argue what is core, non-core. All I'm saying is that, you know, the CIO's role and IT's role was heavily dependent on making things running. There's a lot of tools come that has made simplified the rules. So it frees up some time for you to spend more time on innovation. But you should pay attention to that, right? So it's not 100% it runs all by itself and I'm going to float in the ether layer. So operations is still important. And if you run a good infrastructure, you can save a ton of money and time and agility, so that forces you to work on something else. So I just want people to say, yes, things are better. I mean, like there's something called the SaaS applications, right? So we all worried about running emails and email servers and so on. I don't worry about that anymore. Somebody else does that for me. We worried about running payroll. So there's platform as a service like ADP who runs that for you. I was worried about, you know, what happens during Christmas or Diwali shopping. Would my website scale up? And now you have cloud services to scale up. So it does free up your time so you're moving up the value chain to go more to the business. But you don't want to take the ridiculous extreme to say, I don't want to do any of this. Then we don't really need you, right? Your job could be outsourced.
True. You know, let's talk a little bit about marketplace, how things are playing out. So on one hand, we see companies like HP who are sort of going on the route of, hey, let's become leaner, more defined purpose, and sort of like you know, separate out different units. And then on the other side, we also see trends such as Dell saying, hey, I actually need to bulk up because of these products and services around me. How are you seeing it play out in the market? And what do you think is CIO's role in both these scenarios, when you're bulking up or when you're sort of becoming leaner?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things with the large cloud services companies, if you looked at it, is they had enough capacity to do something, and they were able to spin it off as a business for cloud. So Amazon needed a big data center to run their shopping network, and they figured, okay, we have the expertise and the knowledge to run a large data center. Can I do this for other people? So Microsoft, you know, ran, you know, their email and other structure for everybody else, and said, well, I have an infrastructure that I can do more than just email. I can do compute in Azure. Almost all of them came up with, you know, I have a big need, and you know, I can parlay that. So I think Dell has a very unique, and so as the CIO of Dell, I'm looking and saying, I'm going to, in VMware, I already have the world's largest private cloud. So it runs and feels very much like Amazon or Azure, but it's secure, it's within my data center, and it's, I mean, if you run it at scale, my costs are much better than any public cloud that I can get, because I have scale, right? That's the trick. With Dell, you're going to have even larger private cloud. You're going to have a massive private cloud to run a $70 billion business with, you know, 200, maybe 150,000 employees and so on. So now they can offer that private cloud to other companies as an enterprise class cloud. So I think that's the play. They're bulking up to give that kind of services to folks. Some companies want to, you know, focus. Time will tell which strategy makes sense. The Dell strategy seems to make sense to me is because they're getting the components like VMware, EMC, Dell, and then saying now I can build a world-class private cloud. The challenges generally in both, say, in technology itself, the challenges for CIO is, it's like in, you know, so I played, you know, league cricket here. So I think I'm a very good batsman, and I'm okay. Then all of a sudden, if you go to a tech, so I've been a CIO in Honeywell, J&J, Glaxo, and so on. If you go to VMware and Juniper, you're playing a fastball from Shoaib Akhtar that you've never seen before. That's what it is. You're playing in a major league where your boss has got, you know, a PhD from Carnegie Mellon in computer science, and your peers know as much and more about you, you know, about computer science than you do. and you have to hold your own. So it is really getting into your major league. So that's one part of it. Is it's in any technology company, bulk, whatever, is you better be good. Otherwise, you'll be found out. But at the same time, CIO is a profession. So my son is a computer science guy. Berkeley, he's probably more educated, smarter. He can program more than me. He would make a terrible CIO. So you have to, and most of the folks in the VMware who work for peers of me will make terrible CIOs. They're smarter than me. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, and it is a profession that you learn over time, and I put in 25, 30 years of experience into it. So just because you can do an Excel spreadsheet better, or you can program better, or you know how to set up a Macintosh better, I mean, that's not really the job. So you can hold your own, but it's, you have to be both business savvy and technically savvy, and it's more leadership and alliances and things that you can make with. People need to want to work for you. How do you attract talent? All that becomes a challenging kind of experience on a larger technology company.
And, that's so true. I wanted to ask you, when it comes to talent, I think that is, as millennials come in more and more, we always talk about women in technology. We want to do more about it, a topic close to my heart. I don't know if we have done enough work. And I think for companies like VMware or Target, I think these are really, really important. I mean, we may find our next Virat Kohli out of the millennials crowd. What do you think about this? And how are you working with, attracting more millennial talent, but kind of making them successful inside, and also from women in technology?
Sure. Two important questions. I think, again, the pendulum always goes one way. Some companies just say millennials are the only ones who know computers, and they are actually discriminating against older people. That's the problem we have in Silicon Valley's ageism, actually. It's a reverse of that. That's crazy. Things like IoT and so on, my son doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know a factory, and he can be super bright. He can probably learn things faster than me in half the time, but I've still been, that still means 15 years. So, and that's still discrimination, that's wrong. So we can't go to that extreme. What I found with millennials is some of the lessons learned for me is I spend a lot of time in something called reverse mentoring. So I spend a lot of time mentoring millennials, a lot of them women. But I learn a lot more from them in a coffee shop than they do. So they think they're learning a lot from me, and I'm finding out I'm refreshed more. So two things that we have to change as leaders is I am kind of burdened with a lot of knowledge. I'm burdened with a lot of experience, and that is wearing me down. And I have a lot of things to unlearn. So you have to quickly realize and say, oh my God, I wish I didn't know so much, in a certain way. So you have to reach that stage to be a little bit humble, to learn that these are really bright and they know a lot, and how do they think, and you have to be interested in it. So every around the Christmas holidays time, I go through a cleansing routine in my mind when I get a few minutes to say, what do I want to be, and how do I change myself? It's like Madonna, who comes up with a different avatar. You have to come up with a different avatar in January, but now probably you have to do it in a quarterly kind of a basis. You have to cleanse your mind and say, you're not really that good, you're not really that smart, get into the learning mindset. But the millennials this is what I've learned. One is millennials are not going to work for the bosses I work for. I work for bosses who are very tough. You will do this or I'll kill you, and you must get the projects done. And I learned a lot from them, but they were not really nice people. I don't think the millennials are going to work for people like that. They want to work for bosses who are coaches, inspirational, they feel good about coming to work, who recognizes what they do. I don't think I've been recognized for the first 20 years of my career. So that's not going to work. And what is interesting is I'm finding out I don't want to work for those bosses anymore. Why should I work for somebody who's barking orders all the time? So I think it's a good change that you have. I also find that millennials, all the companies say they want to change the world, but very few of them are they're making money. So if that is changing the world, if you're making money, good for you. But that is not very attractive to the top millennials, is they really, they want to change the world. So do you really mean social causes? Do you really do the right things? Are you doing something about education and so on? And are you really authentic about it? Is the thing that you have to do to get them over. So the best talent, so I'm competing with talent in the Silicon Valley among the Googles, Facebook, and our friend from Nutanix and so on. But we always stand our own, at least in IT, because They want to work for a good guy. And for that, you have to be authentic because people figure you out. They want to work for somebody who does, in companies who do good things. And it has to be a lot more than I want to make a ton of money and make the quarter. So that seems to be they're really passionate about the cause. And I hope they don't lose that idealism. So that's the trick, the little bit I've learned from millennials is you know, there's more than money that attracts them. Women in technology, the two points of view I have is that I hope it's unconscious bias that we have. I hope it's not conscious bias because that'll pick a very skeptical view of the world for me, and I'm more of an optimist. But I think we have unconscious biases when we read resumes, and there have been studies done where you change the same name of an engineer and change it to a man's name versus woman's name, and the man gets hired, and sometimes gets hired by women. So women themselves have unconscious bias about hiring technical talent. So that we just have to get our mind out. In the Valley, you know, so I think ours is like 20%. It's gone from 10 to you know, 15 to 20%. It's still pathetic. I mean, if you look at the population, it should be about 50. Two things we shouldn't do is, I think some companies have promoted women in leading positions clearly who are not qualified already, and that's actually set women back. Because people point and say, you know, this is what happens. You know, in their minds, they don't say it in their faces. So we should just still be meritocracy-based, I believe. Second is, I think we've misled women by saying, you know, the science education is important. I don't think we really mean that. We really mean that we want programmers. And we say STEM. So if you do biotech, and if you do biology and zoology, all these are sciences, you won't get jobs. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you know, I think the industry should be honest on what they're looking for because you don't want to mislead women into, I mean, I know a lot of people with bioengineering from good universities who are not going to get employed in the Valley, right? So whether you believe it or not, right or wrong, if you think you want coders, you want Java programmers, and that's what you want, you might as well say that's what you want. Don't put fancy acronyms and then confuse people. So I think, we need to be honest, we have to get some unconscious bias out. We should still base it on meritocracy. And there are more role models coming. I mean, I think when I started in computer science, I sound like an old guy, there were not too many VPs in technology in companies like Honeywell or Johnson & Johnson. I remember being the first guy, and it was like a novelty Indian vice president in a Fortune 50 companies. It's not true, you know, once the glass ceiling is broken. So now that you have very competent women CEOs in companies, I think, you know, it'll get broken. But I think we have some fundamental problems to resolve.
And that's so true. I think even whenever we talk to our millennials, the fact that Target is contributing 5% to social causes globally, 5% of their profits, I think really resonates with them. Like you said, doing good is also very important. And from a women in technology perspective, the fact that we have half our executive team made up of women based on meritocracy, I think that appeals to people. And you're so right about that. Bas, the last question we have before maybe we can take one or two from the audience is, you know, the CIO role has been sort of evolving on its own. Like my own boss, who's Mike McNamara, who's the CIO, but also the CDO for Target. And I think you have also done roles which are kind of back and forth between business and technology. What do you see happening to CIO role as technology becomes more mainstream and really important?
I think, first of all, the CIO role itself is new. I mean, it's happened in CFO roles have been there for a long time, this marketing and sales, and those positions are defined. The CEOs themselves don't understand the value of CIOs. I think you're going to get what you expect. If you say, hey, I want somebody to run my data center and IT and so on, that's what your CIO is going to do. If you say, I want somebody who's helpful in the front with the customers, drive my business and so on, then you go and recruit the person you want. So I think the CEOs themselves don't know what they want from a CIO. And they recruit for person, and then that stereotype gets amplified. So from being the chief technical person in a company, people realize we don't really want a geek, we want a business person. We swung to the other side where we get pure business people who don't understand anything about technology. That doesn't work. Then if you say we need balance, and then the right CIO right now has to have a lot of business value, and then has to lead the company in the next digital journey and connect to the customer. So my role in VMware, for example, has morphed. This is why, and you have to look at your job and morph. But there's the Maslow's law of hierarchy. Your operations have to work. If my operations don't work, I shouldn't talk strategy. If my email doesn't work, you can't say I'm a CDO. That makes no sense. Go get your email working. But once it's working, you must talk strategy. There's no point saying I'm having 99.99% uptime. Who cares? At some stage, you got to move on and talk about that. So I think the CIO role, as far as I know right now, at least my role is I am the Chief Digitization Officer. I don't believe in two roles for that. You're defining what the new business roles and models are. You are driving innovation in your company. I'm the voice of the customer, so VMware sells to, they wants to get to developers. I run a large development shop. I can tell them what the developers want. CIOs sell to customers. I've been a VMware customer for this long. I can tell them what the CIO as a customer wants. So you can provide strategic input to the business on which companies to buy and not buy. But you have to earn the respect to do it. You can't just demand that, right? So it took me some time to make sure that, I have to convince my peers that I can run the shop. And then now they are soliciting advice. And this improving within a company, the value of CIOs would improve. I mean, more and more your company, I mean, our target, if I look at it in 3 years, you'll become an all-digital company. Nobody will care that you have shops. Nobody will care that you have,
We won't agree with that, but yeah.
I will. Let's take a bet. It'll be all digital, guaranteed. 3 years from now, $25.
They said that 3 years back as well.
Yep.
Do we take questions from audience? Is there a way? Yeah.
Hi. So as a CIO, end user technology is, I guess, very important for you, for your employees to make sure that, like you say, the shop is running, right? So if there was something that keeps you awake at night, from the standpoint of the technology that end users touch every day, what would that be, or what would those 2 or 3 things be?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I sleep very soundly at night. So nothing keeps me up at night. I mean, I have nothing in my conscience. I mean, you come in and do as hard work as you can, and you trust the people you have. So that's a tough question, but the things that I think about is, end user productivity has improved significantly, but you have to make a decision whether you want to get an A+ in end user computing, an A or a B. And you have to make a conscious decision because there are costs and energies required to do that, right? In certain, there will be always people saying, I have the worst IT department, my PC doesn't boot up, and blah, 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 that'll happen. So you need to make sure that those basic things are not fixed. But the goal is to optimize the company resources and times to get the best productivity experience possible, but not to just make that a holy grail, because satisfying people is not what a company's goal should be. The company should make money and do shareholder value. So I would say, I won't worry about which device people bring in. If you like an Apple phone, bring it in. If you bring an Android, bring it in. I don't want to be dictating. So a lot of people want to use the devices they want to use. People like tablets, people like phones, people like Apple, people like Dell, So my thing would be enable the end users to use whatever tools is required to do the job. That's number one, because it's also personal based. You can never convince an iPhone guy that Android is equivalent or good. Even if it's true, you can never convince them. It's a personal choice. So I would say bring your own devices, enabling people to bring the devices they want to use. That's one. In enterprise, I actually worry about mobility. I don't think we've done anything on mobility. You folks depend entirely on things like WhatsApp and Google Maps and Waze and so on. These are consumer apps. In the enterprise, most people are just using email and calendar, which is a shame. We were using email and calendar in a BlackBerry in 1999, and you're doing that on iPhone and Android. That doesn't say much about enterprise computing in mobile. And then some people say, I have a Coupa client, a Concur client, but those things are difficult to use. You have to log into different clients, you download new clients, and then you run out of space. The first thing that you delete is your Concur or Coupa client because you want to put in your Angry Bird software. So I think, so people haven't thought through the workflow. I mean, and so we've spent some time in Palo Alto in my team to do it. And this is my computer. I need to be able to work on this completely, do everything I do. And so we haven't, that's something I worry about is I don't think enterprises have really taken enterprise mobility nearly as much as consumer mobility has taken on.
Hi, this is Madan. I'm the founder of Act on Cloud, one of the Emerge 50 company. There is a general saying that if you could sell it to a CIO, you can pretty much sell it to anybody in the world. And so I would like to hear your perspective. How we could cut short the sales cycle when we try to sell to a CIO.
Yeah, I wouldn't entirely agree with that. A good CIO is going to listen to his folks and not override all the time. A good CIO also overrides decisions, and I've overridden technical decisions. I was the one who chose to go VMware when I was in Honeywell, but a good one, you don't do that all the time. So you can't just bypass the entire chain and go there because you'll have some backlash. So you have to make sure your persona of end users, your customer is met as well. And don't try to just short circuit the process and go there because that may backfire. So that's the first thing I would tell you. But what I think you can't put all CIOs on some categories. Unfortunately, a few of my group like to get fame and fortune. So they want to know if I bet with your platform, can I get fame and fortune? I hope that's 10% of the population. So you need to figure out how can you make them heroes. But the good ones want to add value to the company. So, you have to quickly come back and say, if I use the product, what value can I add? Can my salespeople sell better? Can I actually save money? Would manufacturing work? That's the value proposition. By the way, the bar is very low. The sales to the CIOs, I haven't met good sales. I remember 2 or 3 names of salespeople from all the enterprise companies that I work with. This is really, really bad. So the slightly better ones get the sale. So the bar is low. The folks are either hardcore like used car sales or sell on fear or, so there's a lot more maturity has to go on in enterprise computing. It's really, really bad kind of a scene. So you can be refreshingly different and get the, you can get the mind share of a CIO very easily. The other thing is, I always think the real estate agents that I like, if I go to Palo Alto, the real estate agents I like are people who educate me, who come back and say, here's the best school system, here's where the value will hold, here are other areas you can look with is better in your budget. And, if you have young kids, you better have a safer neighborhood. The people who educate me are the best real estate agent, and I end up buying a house from them. So the companies that educate me and give me thought leadership and so on are the ones I'm going to listen to. And the buying happens because I learned something from them and I get value from them. So, if you can look at opportunities, again, the good CIOs want to learn and grow. So, if you can find a ways to educate them and add some value, they would definitely do business with you and give you time.
Okay, so there's a lot of talk about bimodal IT and the evolving role of the CIO and the Chief Digital Officer coming in and CMO stepping up. So how do you think this whole thing will stack up in future, and what should CIO do to be the one in the leading position?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is analyst talk and writing and people who have never been in the enterprises. A lot of it's BS. Typically you get a chief digital officer if your CIO is not any good. And you don't have the heart to say that your CIO is not good and you don't want to replace that person, right? That's one. Or you get that person, it's like, I don't want to exercise, I don't want to eat right, I want to drink, and I want to smoke, and I want to lose weight. I want to look good. That's what I want. So what tablet do you have? That tablet is the chief digitization officer. I don't give a thing about IT, I don't care, blah, blah, blah. I want a tablet that makes me look good, or it's like a Botox operation. Typically after 2 years, the organizations are in a mess when that happens. Because digitization is changing people, process, and technology. The biggest part of my job is I hate that I have to work with people. In a way, if it's all computers, things would be so much easier. I can roll out technology so fast. You have to work with the culture of a company. So anyway, I honestly don't believe that. You do that if you feel like, hey, I need somebody to run the trains on time, and let me go get somebody else. So that's a compromise question. And I can tell you I was a chief digitization officer 16 years ago, so it's not a new title, and ended up being a group CIO for the company. So that's one. The second thing is bimodal IT, I feel like it's like a little bit like a caste system. It's like, so if I say I have bimodal IT, which part of the IT would you like to work? There's a low-speed IT or high-speed IT. Which ones would you like to have a job with? Yeah, okay. So why would you do that? I mean, you want to kill 80% of your company's innovation? I think each individual has to be bimodal. So what I tell people is, if you're in a data center, unfortunately, your primary job is to make sure the data center is up. You have to back up. You can't say that is beneath your job. I have done backups in my life, so why is it so difficult? But if you automate it and you do it right, then you need to find 10% of your time to work on innovation, then find 20% of your time and 30% of the time on innovation, right? So I want to hire very lazy but very smart people because they automate the mundane things and they work on creative things. But so generally, I mean, you need every individual you need the IT function to start thinking bimodal rather than saying, here are the smart guys and here are the not too smart guys. The only difference being there are some people who would say, hey, I like Oracle 11i, I like SAP, I want to focus on that. And I want to innovate in that area. I don't want to really get into Java, I don't want to really get into Kubernetes or whatever. It's okay, you do need a few people to do that. But I find generally, I came from Bangalore. Last year I came to Bangalore, there was nothing to read or to talk about. Today, I mean, everybody in Bangalore, an IT team, we're talking about product development. They're doing things in IoT and they all know that if the network was not working, I don't want them to talk about that. But since the basics are working, you can go to Bangalore office here and mobile development, IoT, whatever the heck you want to do, the guys are thinking about artificial intelligence. All these are just the IT guys who were working on Oracle and SAP like 3 years ago.
All right, with that, let's bring this discussion to close. Thank you so much, Bask. I think it was great to hear from you. And I would love to meet 3 years from now because I think at NPC maybe, and Target would be both digital and stores.
I'll be all online. You can't see me anymore.